5 more goals for the team that can't score. Arteta's side break another record while keeping the pressure on Liverpool and Chelsea at the top of the division. Is Gabriel Jesus well and truly back? Concern over Bukayo Saka, and we'll be analysing what I felt was a strange game. Yeah, you heard me. Let's get into this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Welcome along to the pod, everybody. How you doing? Happy Sunday to you all. Always a much happier Sunday after an Arsenal victory on the Saturday. And that's exactly what we got. A 5-star victory. 5 goals away at Crystal Palace. Not bad for a team that can't score. However, there is some worry and there is some concern around the fitness of one of our star men, Bukayo Saka, who went off during the game with what looked like a hamstring problem, had to leave Selhurst Park on crutches. That's never a good sign. And you can understand why there's a little bit of panic around what that means for him and how long he might just be out for. We haven't had, at the time of recording, any update on that. I'm sure we'll get some kind of indication over the coming days, fingers crossed. Maybe Arsenal will try and stay quiet on it. You know that Mikel Arteta likes to keep these things close to his chest. You know that he doesn't like to give too much away, and maybe allowing Ipswich, our next opponents, to think that Bukayo Saka has a chance of returning is the best way of going about it. But, you know, when you look at the nature of the problem, when you watch the replay back of kind of how he pulled up and how instantly he knew that, you know, his afternoon, or his evening, I should say, was over, that's got to be a worry. And to see the scenes of him leaving the stadium the way he did, it does put a bit of a downer on what was otherwise a really, really good night down in South London. Let's say a few hellos because there's plenty of you with us this morning across YouTube, and we're streaming live on X today as well. Big hello to Tom. We've got Brian joining us. We've got Steve. Pavel is with us. Crypto says, I just love the unpredictability of our attack. I don't think that was the case a few weeks ago. That's the problem. Junior Gunner is with us. Chenky is with us. And we've got Top Have I said enough? I think so. It says, first time on the live stream. Big up, Harry. Been a long time listener of the pod, but it's the first time I've managed to catch it live. Welcome, and thank you, of course, for joining us. Okay, we've got lots to get into today, and I think we should start with some statistics. You want to call them statistics? I'm trying to think where I've just put my mobile phone, which had those statistics on it. Obviously, I can't find it right now. Don't know where I put it. Hold on. No, I think I've left it downstairs. Forget about it. We'll skip those statistics. I'll bring them up on the next episode. How unprofessional of me. But one of them, I know one of them off the top of my head, was that Arsenal have broken yet another record under Mikel Arteta. No team ever has scored 5+ goals in an away game more than us in a calendar year. That's 6 times for the Arsenal. And Zed Tom puts that in the chat as well early on in the stream. So that helped me out there because I couldn't remember all the details of it. But yeah, look, it's funny, isn't it? Because like, you just don't know whether you're coming or going with this team. Like, one week we're talking about a lack of creativity, a lack of spark, an inability to break people down, a lack of goals, you know, Gabriel Jesus not doing the business. And then you fast forward a week and we're talking about Arsenal having scored 8 goals in 2 games, Gabriel Jesus having scored 5 across those 2 games. And you're sitting there sort of scratching your head thinking, was I overreacting about maybe what happened in the previous weeks? But then, you know, I thought we were kind of over that. And then we had the Fulham game, and then we had the Everton game, 2 games where we were clearly lacking cutting edge in that final third. And people started to worry again. And then you go and put in a performance like we did yesterday. And then people go, calm down, calm down. It's like this ongoing cycle this season. And basically what it boils down to is inconsistency. And that is why I think there are a lot of Arsenal fans out there who question whether or not we're up to winning the Premier League title this year. Look, a lot of people talk about Liverpool and their situation, and you know, the fact that they're right up there, and you know, we're probably going to end up having to, you know, topple them. They're going to be what look like the front runners at this stage. And people keep saying, well, they're not going to drop points. They will drop points at some point. Like, for me, there's no doubt in my mind about that. It's not like something that I look at and think, well, that's not going to happen. No, like Liverpool will have a dip at some point. Now, how big or long that dip lasts for, it's really, really difficult to say. But over the course of the season, everybody has those types of periods. So there's a part of me that looks at them and goes, well, they look really good. There's a part of me that looks at them and goes, yeah, but that dip will come. The big question for me, if you look at it through an Arsenal lens, is when that happens, which I think it will we be good enough and will we be on the ball enough to make that count and to take full advantage of that? And that's the question that I'm struggling with right now. Because as I say, inconsistency is a big problem. 1 week we can't hit a barn door, and the next week we put in a performance like we did yesterday, where we were incredibly potent and lethal and clinical in the final third. I mentioned in the intro that I thought this was a weird game. The reason I thought it was a weird game was because I didn't think we actually played that well, considering that we won by 5-1. And that's just a weird headspace to be in. But we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Let's start with team selection. Best place to start, beginning of the game. Mikel Arteta went into this game with some decisions to make. Gabriel Jesus was excellent in midweek in the Carabao Cup and staked the claim for a starting place in this one. Declan Rice was back in the picture, having missed out on the squad for Palace in the Cup. Look, before the Palace game in the Cup, Mikel Arteta told us that Declan Rice was fine. And then we all assumed that it was Declan Rice being rested, protected. Maybe there was a little bit of doubt around his fitness. And so the decision was taken that there shouldn't be any risks, right? We shouldn't take any risks with his fitness. He's a really important player, etc., etc. And then he's back in the squad yesterday, and you see him sort of turning up with the team, and you think, well, he's definitely going to start, and he doesn't, which says to me, if I'm reading between the lines, that there was a problem in midweek. He wasn't just fine. And obviously, if he wasn't fit enough to start yesterday, then we're clearly dealing with something. He's clearly nursing something at this moment in time. So he wasn't in the side. But rather than putting Mikel Merino in to give the midfield a little bit more of a kind of orthodox feel, Mikel Arteta decided to put Kai Havertz back in there. Now, when I saw this, I was annoyed. I got to be honest. Cards on the table here, I was annoyed. Because for a long, long time, we've discussed on this pod and on various other channels and platforms about Kai Havertz as a midfielder. And, I just don't see it. Like, I think he's a really good all-round footballer, and I think he always gives you 100%. I don't think you can ever question his work rate. I don't think you can ever question the physical side of it with Kai Havertz. But suitability to that midfield role, I just don't see it. I feel like if you play Rice and Partey, for instance, let's say that Odegaard was unavailable, and you played a more sort of kind of double pivot in that deeper midfield area, and then you pushed Havertz on and said to him, get up alongside the centre forward, a bit like we did in the absence of Odegaard, where we were playing this more sort of 4-4-2 like system, then fine. Having him make runs and join in on the attack from deep, it works. But as much as I want to praise him because he scored yesterday, and that's ultimately what we're asking for from Kai Havertz pretty much all the time. That's the criticism he gets. Doesn't score enough goals. Is he a goal scorer, etc., etc. That's the thing that we always get. He scored, so it's difficult to complain. But I think you saw quite clearly the vulnerability that creates in our midfield. And it wasn't just down to Kai Havertz, by the way. There were other players in that midfield yesterday that just weren't up to the level. And we'll come on to talk about them in a little bit. But I just think you saw that imbalance again. And on another day, I don't think we get away with that. I feel like our potency and the fact that we were clinical in the final third masked the fact that this wasn't a very good performance, not in my opinion. And it sounds mad to say that because you go away from home, London derby, atmospheric place like Selhurst Park, and you win by 5-1, and Harry comes away unhappy and frustrated. Maybe I'm unhappy at the performance and I'm frustrated by aspects of the performance, but obviously I'm delighted with the outcome. And ultimately, this is an outcome sport, right? You will be judged on the outcomes. If you win games, nobody really cares about what the performance looked like. Nobody really goes back and says, well, we didn't deserve to win that game. No, you look at the 3 points on the board, you take it and you move on. So Havertz starting in midfield annoyed me. It irritated me. When I was really excited about the game, I read that and I thought, here we go. And obviously, Jesus starts up front, deservedly so, after what he provided in midweek. And he gave Mikel Arteta a lot of thinking to do, I think, over the course of the week, because I don't think that Jesus had any chance in hell of starting, by the way, in this game, had he not done what he did on the Wednesday previously. So it shows you that managers do have to work on the fly, that plans change quite a bit. The start was obviously very, very strong because Gabriel Jesus put us in front nice and early. Well work move down the right-hand side. Cross comes in. Gabriel Magalhaes up from the back does really well, I think, to just create that block, allowing Gabriel Jesus to run onto the ball in space, and he just sweeps it in at the near post. A confident finish from someone whose confidence has obviously dramatically increased over the course of the last few days. But that lead didn't last very long, and Ismaila Sarr went down the other end of the pitch and equalised for Crystal Palace. And that was a goal that really wound me up. Really wound me up for a number of reasons. I think Thomas Partey wasn't tracking back enough or quickly enough, and I'll come on to his performance in a bit. But I also thought that William Saliba just looked, I don't know what the word is here, like disinterested, lethargic. Like it just seemed to me like William Saliba mentally hadn't checked in yesterday. And sort of the ball gets to Sarr and he's sort of slowly making his way towards the edge of the Arsenal box, and Saliba's retreating. And I understand that as centre-halves, you want to jockey people into certain positions, right? And you have to bide your time. You have to pick the right moment to dive in or to try and be the aggressor. And I get that. And he's normally so good at judging when that point is and when that point comes. This time, he just completely gets it wrong. He's dropping, never gets close, never gets tight enough. And Sarr just opens up his right boot and finds the far corner and does it brilliantly. Great goal from Sarr. You don't want to take anything away from him, but it felt like a really avoidable one from an Arsenal perspective, and it annoyed me. Thankfully, we went down the other end and responded again really, really quickly and just, put a stop to any kind of momentum that Crystal Palace were building, having actually started the game quite well, with the exception of conceding that early Jesus goal. Then they find the equaliser. Selhurst Park's rocking. The place is bouncing, and Arsenal go down the other end and score again, just to kill that mood and kill that kind of enthusiasm that was growing within the stands. And again, it was Gabriel Jesus. It's another goal from a corner. Thomas Partey does really well to kind of just kill the ball dead as it comes down out of the air, and then just tee up Jesus, who produces another unbelievable finish. And so, yeah, Arsenal 2-1 up. And then obviously we get the third goal through Kai Havertz. Jesus, unlucky not to have his hat-trick. His header comes off the foot of the post. And the quickest player inside the penalty area to react is Kai Havertz, which backs up the point that he is more a striker than anything else, because he has that presence of mind. He has that understanding of the fact that the ball could still be alive as Gabriel Jesus attacks it. And he is on his toes and he makes a move towards the goal before anybody else. Clearly onside. I have to say, when I saw the goal in real time, there was a part of me that thought, is he offside here? Like, how has he managed to have this much space and be first to the ball this sort of clearly if he's not in an offside position? You watch the replay back and it's just good anticipation from him and a brilliant goal in that sense. So Arsenal 3-1 up. And from that point, you feel really, really good about it. But then, of course, we lost Bukayo Saka. During that first half chaos, we lost the England international to what looked like a hamstring injury. I've seen lots of people online trying to kind of get ahead of the curve in terms of what this injury is and how long it's going to keep him sidelined for. I've read hamstring pull. I've read hamstring tear. I've read 3 weeks on the sidelines. I've read 8 to 10 weeks on the sidelines. The truth is, I have no idea how long Bukayo Saka is going to be out for. I'd rather not speculate, because if I speculate, that might cause me to go into a panic, maybe others to go into a panic and just kill the whole mood around the team right now. Let's just hold on, hold fire. Let's see what the next few days are going to bring in terms of the findings around that injury, because we all know how important he is to us. But I guess one of the good things that came out of that, and I say that in a way where I'm trying to make it sound like there's a positive in there. There really isn't. You lose a player like Bukayo Saka, there isn't. But Martinelli going over to the right-hand side, I feel like it really worked for him. I feel like he looked really comfortable and confident in that position. And I'm just starting to wonder, all the things that we've been saying about Martinelli and his maybe hesitance when it comes to taking people on and decision-making. I'm just wondering if the fact that he moved over to his strongest side in terms of the foot that he kicks with and could end up playing there now for a period of time if indeed Bukayo Saka is ruled out. I just wonder if that's going to be the sort of remaking of him, in that when he's playing on the left-hand side, obviously, he wants to come inside. You know that he wants to cut in onto that right foot. That's his priority every single time. He does go on the outside, which is good, and relies on his pace. But then once he gets around you, he's got to then get back around the ball so that he can work the ball onto that right foot of his. I don't think his left foot is particularly good. But when he plays on the right and you're coming up against low, narrow blocks, which is invariably what we face, and they want to show him on the outside, he's happy to go there. Because his priority is to get on that right foot, and he's happy to go on that right-hand side and on the outside, because that's where they're going to be showing him, which makes it by default easier. But he's also got that rapid turn of pace, that sharpness, that explosiveness to get away from you. And if he can get to the byline on his stronger foot, then in theory, the delivery should be better. And I think we got a glimpse of that yesterday. So maybe the fact that he might have to play on the right-hand side now for a period of time, and that his mind will be made up for him in the fact that he has to go on the outside, instead of having this thing where he's caught in two minds. Do I go on the outside? Do I go on the inside? Maybe that's going to help and benefit Gabriel Martinelli. Certainly doesn't benefit the team that Bukayo Saka's out, but I'm just trying to find a positive in what is obviously bad news for the Gunners. We'll talk a little bit more about Martinelli as an option on the right-hand side when we know more about the Bukayo Saka injury and, what that looks like, how long he's potentially going to be out for, etc., etc. Before we continue, before we talk about some of the other aspects of the game, and we continue to break down what was, as I keep saying, a strange game in my opinion, I do want to remind you guys that the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast is partnered with NordVPN. It's the best VPN service out there. It's a service that I personally can't do without anymore. Whether you're looking to stream your favorite Christmas films or all the festive football, NordVPN is the one for you. You can sign up via the link in the description. Visit nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC for a mega discount and 4 months free at the end of your plan. Not only does it give me extra protection when surfing the web, downloading or streaming, but I now have the ability to access geo-blocked content by changing my location virtually with the click of a button. Sign up now via nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC and take advantage of this amazing offer. Plus, with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, it is totally risk-free. You won't regret it. nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC. Check it out. Okay, let's get back to the match chat. And don't worry, there'll be plenty of time for your questions and your thoughts. So keep the chat box going. Okay, so I touched on the fact that I didn't like the decision to put Havertz back into the midfield. And I want to explain a little bit more about why. It's not that I don't like Kai Havertz, okay? It's not that I don't rate the guy. It's not that I don't acknowledge and accept that he's a really versatile footballer, because he is. But I'm a big believer in balance. And I think that when you've got the right balance in midfield, a team can function in the way that it should. All the sort of extra parts, all the additional parts of the equation make sense when the midfield balance is right. I think it's the most important area of the team. I've always believed that. I've always felt that. And I think that sometimes it isn't even about picking the best individuals. It's about picking the unit that complements each other the best, and that then gives you that balance to A, be defensively as solid as you possibly can, and B, offensively be the side that you want to be. And a lot of the time when we've talked about a lack of creativity, people by default look at, the wingers, the centre forward, and a lot of the time the problem starts deeper in the team for me. I don't want to say that creativity was a problem yesterday, because we scored 5 goals and I probably look a little bit stupid. But what I do want to say is that we looked really vulnerable defensively with that midfield. And people will say that Crystal Palace were really good, and they were. And they deserve their credit. They deserve their praise and their flowers, all the rest of it. But for me, we made it easy for them. We made it really, really easy for them by picking an unbalanced midfield and allowing them to basically isolate Thomas Partey, who I've got to say didn't look at it yesterday for me. At the start of the season and during pre-season, you would have heard me on this podcast repeatedly saying Thomas Partey doesn't look up to it anymore. I kept saying that because I genuinely felt that way. I felt that physically, he wasn't at the level that we needed him to be. I felt like he wasn't getting across the ground quick enough, well enough. And I thought that in giving him responsibility of large spaces on the pitch, we were basically setting ourselves up to fail. Then he has this period where he looks like he's, back at his best, and he's dominating midfields, and he's tucking in at fullback when he's necessary, and he's covering there for us. And, he's the progressive passer from deep, and he's doing a wonderful job. And you start to look at Thomas Partey and you go, yeah, is this guy washed? Is this guy finished? Or is there still something for us to extract from him? And then you watched him yesterday, and for me, he looked like the washed version, in inverted commas, of Thomas Partey, and the version of Thomas Partey that people were seeing during pre-season that prompted so many to call for him to be replaced. And he wasn't helped by the fact that he barely had a midfield around him. He wasn't helped by the fact that Kai Havertz wanted to play like a second striker, that Martin Odegaard is always going to go drifting and searching into different places, particularly in those half spaces on the right. So, I don't want to pin it all on Thomas Partey, but for me, he just didn't have the legs yesterday to get across the park and plug all the holes that we needed him to. Timber would go in field and Partey would have to drop into right back, meaning that then when the transition happened, we had no midfield. Sometimes it was happening on the left where Miles Lewis-Skelly was going in, and then we'd have to shift the defense across to accommodate for the fact that he was out of position when we lost the ball. And again, we had no midfield. So, I mean, you can look at the player, and I am looking at the player, and you can pinpoint maybe some of the shortcomings that belong to the individual. But as a collective, the balance was just completely off and wrong. So I'm criticizing Thomas Partey because I think his performance deserves it, because I think he made some other really sloppy decisions. I think on an individual level, he didn't look like he was up to getting across to certain situations, too slow to react to certain situations. But I think that problem stems from the collective lacking the balance that we needed in order to, to do what we wanted, which was try and control the game and try and control the midfield. So, yeah, we were too vulnerable in the transitions. The midfield was off balance. Partey was poor, I thought. That's kind of my summary on the midfield display. I thought Odegaard was poor as well. Like, Odegaard didn't have a good game. Let's be honest about it. Let's be frank about it. He didn't look very good either. And he's been a bit hit and miss since he's come back, to be fair to him. 1 minute he looks great, and the next minute he doesn't. It's difficult because he's been out for a period of time and he's trying to build himself back up. I get that. I understand that. But I think we've become so accustomed to him putting in these tip-top performances week in, week out, that when he does have an off game, it's glaringly obvious. And this was one of the rare occasions where Arsenal score a load of goals, even though Martin Odegaard didn't quite look at it. I do want to pick up on this because I didn't actually have this in my sort of bullet points around things that I wanted to discuss today, from Guna76. I think it's worth touching on. He says, I think people need to give Raya his flowers. The guy has saved us so many points. He did make some really, really good saves again yesterday. Hold on. What's happened? One second. Here we go. We're back. Sorry, don't know what happened there. My connection just dipped. I think we're back. You should be able to hear me. Let me know if you can't, of course. But yeah, I think we need to. I think we need to talk a little bit about David Raya, because he made some wonderful saves to keep us in the game yesterday, but he also played some really, really scary passes out from the back. And I know that's part of our game plan. I know that's part of what we want to do. And I know that we like to build up through David Raya. But I just, yeah. There was a few moments in that first half, especially, where I thought the whole defense collectively looked really, really bad. Saliba was shocking in that first half. That's as bad as I've probably seen him play for Arsenal. Gabriel was far from his assured self as well. And obviously then Raya playing a couple of questionable passes. It just gave the first half a really, really shaky and edgy feel. And it's mad because we'd scored 3 goals in that half away from home. Yet I went in at half time and I was thinking that wasn't very good. But then I kept looking at the top left-hand corner of the screen where it said Crystal Palace 1, Arsenal 3. And I was thinking, stop being so fussy. What are you moaning about? But I think, the benefit of hindsight, we can review that. We can look at it and we can say that, yes, we scored the goals. And that comes down to what I've touched on already, that potency and that, efficiency in the final third. I think efficiency is the proper word, or the word that, I think best describes what we saw from Arsenal in the attacking sense. But you can acknowledge that the rest of the performance wasn't good enough. And on another day, you get punished for that. And on another day, it maybe doesn't go the way that it did. I thought Rice and Calafiori coming on was required. It was the necessary step in order to ensure that we didn't blow it, that we didn't give Crystal Palace any hope of finding a way back into the game. And I thought that both of them, when they came on, did really, really well. Rice in particular was outstanding, carrying the ball. There were spaces. And listen, I always talk about Rice as a ball carrier. I think he's a ball carrier before he's a ball progressor any day of the week. His way of progressing the ball is to carry it. Others put their foot on it, look up, play passes through the lines nice and early. That's not really Declan Rice's game. But I thought we saw the best of Rice, and maybe the game state contributed to that in that it was stretched, it was open. Palace are naturally quite an open side anyway, because under Oliver Glasner, they like to play on the front foot. They like to take the game to opposition. I think I mentioned this to you guys on the match day reaction pod after the cup game in midweek. We were in the radio room with Oliver Glasner after that game, and he was angry. He was annoyed, and you might have seen it during the game where he was throwing things and he threw a towel down and he was, throwing his toys out of the pram, essentially. Well, the reason for that, when he was asked in the radio interviews, was because he felt that his team on the day showed Arsenal too much respect, that they didn't go for the throats when it was there to be taken. He felt that when they were 1-0 up against us at the Emirates Stadium with a much changed Arsenal 11, Mikel Arteta had made 8 changes that night. He felt that they really ought to have been going for the throat, and there was a reluctance to do that. And he couldn't figure out where that come from. And based on that, their approach yesterday makes a lot of sense. They were gung-ho. They did want to try and take the game to us at every possible opportunity. The way they did it was pretty similar in that they'd go for the long ball. They'd try and work it up to Mateta. He didn't get as much change out of Gabriel and Saliba as he did out of Jakob Kivior, which was, always going to be the case. But Palace, in their kind of forward-thinking nature under Oliver Glasner, we're always going to leave spaces, and Declan Rice felt like the perfect player to come on at that point in the game. And the same with Calafiori, very, very good defender, but also very forward-thinking, quite happy to, if he sees space in front of him, pick up the ball and carry it into it and get you up the pitch. So those 2 changes made a lot of difference. And when those 2 players came on and I saw their first sort of 3-4 minutes on the pitch, I was 100% confident at that point we were going to win the game. Gabriel Martinelli scored the 4th. It was a Declan Rice shot that Martinelli sort of diverted in at the near post. And then, of course, we got the 5th goal through Declan Rice himself. That was a sublime goal from a player that I think at times has his technical level questioned. So, yeah, brilliant to see him come on, get on the score sheet. Loved his celebration. Loved the smile on his face. Arsenal in another London derby, very, very successful. And, it was a great night. There's a couple of bits I want to talk about. I want to have a little bit of a moan. I'm going to have that little bit of a moan now so we can get that out of the way and get back to more positive things. I do want to talk about Gabriel Jesus and maybe what the difference is between Gabriel Jesus today and maybe Gabriel Jesus 3-4 weeks ago. Actually, before I do that, I got to address this comment in the chat. I'm sorry, Dave, who is 15 minutes behind on the live stream. Says, horrible Havertz take. He was pretty good in midfield yesterday. Lay off him. It's just boring now. He's a Swiss Army knife who scores important goals. I've been one of the biggest Kai Havertz defenders out there. And when I defended him, I was slated for it. And I'm not going after him now. What did I say that was so bad? All I said was that he's not a midfield player. And he isn't. He isn't. It's clear for everybody to see that he isn't. And on another day, you turn up at Selhurst Park with that midfield, you will get ripped apart. On another day, That's how it goes. Because we've all seen the story before. Put Havertz in midfield. He wants to play like a second striker. Have Odegaard drifting wherever he wants on the right-hand side, and you leave the number 6 completely isolated. It was Thomas Partey yesterday. He hasn't got the mobility of Declan Rice. And you saw Crystal Palace cut through us time and time again. Havertz's strength is in the final third, which I touched on. Him anticipating that Jesus' header was going to stay alive was key to that goal. And he goes and scores the goal. And that's why I'm praising him as a forward. But I don't think Kai Havertz playing as a midfielder is sustainable. I don't think it would have happened had Declan Rice been available. I don't think that's unfair to say. I don't think that's unfair to say at all. But anyway, I appreciate the comment. I completely disagree with you where you say that it's a really bad take or suggest that I'm sort of going after Kai Havertz when I've probably been one of the biggest Kai Havertz supporters out there. But anyway, let's talk about referees, because we've got to, haven't we? It's the Premier League. And if you don't talk about referees, what are you talking about? They're always the big story. I was really, really upset by the challenge Nathaniel Klein made on Ricardo Calafiori. I say upset, probably more angry, because that was a potential ankle breaker. And when I saw the first replay of that, I feared for Calafiori, man. When he went down, you could hear him screaming in pain. You could hear him in absolute agony. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, surely the VAR is going to step in here. Surely the VAR is going to pipe up and say, that is a bloody bad tackle. He's gone over the top. He's gone straight into the ankle with the studs. Horrible, horrible, horrible challenge. And that yellow card has to be upgraded to a red. But no, it wasn't. Because we're in this weird space right now where referees in this division seem to want to prioritize pulling people up for where they take throw-ins from ahead of dangerous challenges, ahead of challenges that could potentially end people's careers. And we saw another one of them yesterday in the Premier League as well. So these are happening. I think it was in the West Ham Brighton game. These are happening all the time, these challenges. And again, in that instance, it wasn't pulled up. It wasn't upgraded to the red card that it should have been. And listen, referees are in an impossible position because whatever they do, someone's going to be unhappy. Someone's going to complain. It's the nature of the job that they're in. It's the environment that they work in, right? But at the same time, I just find it ridiculous that we're booking players for taking 3 steps forward before they take a throw in, yet we're seeing dangerous, potentially career-ending challenges like that go through the VAR and everybody's just like, it's fine. Yellow card, no problem. It winds me up. It really, really winds me up. In any other top league in Europe, that would be a red card for Nathaniel Klein. And I've got a massive issue with those types of tackles. I've got a massive issue with them going unpunished. I think that for me is the worst thing in football, and we've seen it. You know, we moan about gamesmanship and people time wasted and all that. All of that stuff, yes, okay, it's annoying, it's frustrating, it shouldn't happen, it needs to be stamped out. But have we gone so far in trying to deal with that we're ignoring the clear and obvious stuff in front of us, which obviously could potentially have much bigger consequences? Junior Gunner, just back to that Havertz debate, says Harry has been Havertz's biggest twerker. Show him some respect. And Space Time says the expletives I was shouting at Klein for that foul. And rightly so, mate. It was a horrible, horrible challenge. Horrible challenge. Okay, I do want to talk a little bit about Gabriel Jesus before I take your questions. So if you've got questions, now is the time to throw them in the chat. Put a little cue at the beginning so that I can pick them out easily from the live chat box, and I'll work my way through as many of those as I possibly can. If I could just ask you as well, if you are with us via YouTube right now, please leave a like on the video. The more likes, the better. There's no reason why we shouldn't have over 100 likes as we're live right now, just looking at the number of people that are watching us. And if you're watching on X, well, I'd really, really appreciate it if you would hop over to YouTube and subscribe to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. If you prefer to listen to it on the move, on the go, in your ears only, the audio versions do come out, of course, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. That is still where the majority of our listenership comes from. So if you could sign up or listen in on those platforms, I'd be super, super grateful. Leave us a review as well. All that stuff helps. If you'd like to go one further, if you're really enjoying the content and you want to support the content, be part of our closer knit community, you can sign up to the Chronicles of a Gooner on Patreon, patreon.com It's on this side. The Chronicles of a Gooner, and you'll get access to more content, additional content, match day reaction pieces after every single Arsenal game. Instant reaction. You won't have to wait till the next morning to hear about my thoughts if you're interested in them. I assume some people are, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? But anyway, get your questions in. Let's get back to Gabriel Jesus. So I've been thinking quite a bit over the course of the night and this morning about what the difference is between Gabriel Jesus today and Gabriel Jesus a week ago. Is it just confidence? Like, can it be that simple? I know we talk about the psychological side of football quite a bit, and I always think it's quite hard to judge that, right? Because, like, for example, when a team concedes a couple of goals, the first thing people say is, "Oh, they bottled it." Let's say you're 2-0 up and you end up drawing the game 2-2. Oh, they're bottle jobs. It must be a psychological issue. Well, it's really, really hard to kind of judge that or measure that, isn't it? In any way, really. So, is it a psychological issue or is it, a technical issue? Is it a tactical issue? I think there are so many different facets to football these days that, you can by default go down the kind of psychological path and often miss some of the other obvious factors that probably need to be considered in the debate and in the discussion. And I think with Gabriel Jesus, that's kind of the wider point that I want to make. I look at him and I think for a while we've been looking at him and saying lack of confidence, not really happening for him. And I think confidence plays a part. When you score a hat-trick the way he did the other night, it does give you something. It does give you a sort of different feeling, doesn't it? You sort of pumping your chest out when you're walking out on the pitch, as opposed to sort of fearing what might be said and written about you the next day if you again fail to hit the back of the net. I know I keep bringing this up, but speaking to Jesus after the game against Palace, and I know it's easy for him to be in this kind of mood when he's just come off the pitch having scored a hat-trick, but that was someone to me that knows how good he is, that knows what he can do, that believes in himself. And rather than sitting there wallowing in the fact that it's not really going his way and he wasn't getting the rub of the green, he's someone that was clearly very, very motivated to prove people wrong. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are fueled by the possibility of proving their doubters wrong. Some people take that and channel it in the right way. And I feel like Gabriel Jesus is doing that. Physically, he looks better than he's been for ages, in my opinion. Sharper in the turn, quicker across the ground. I think he looks really, really good again. And he looks back to the level that, we remember him being at when he first arrived at the club a few seasons back now. Do I think that he's turned the corner and from now on he's going to score 20 plus goals every season? No, I don't, because that's not Gabriel Jesus, right? It's in his nature to be a little bit streaky. It's in his nature to be a little bit inconsistent in front of goal. But the problem for me was that he'd become really not just inconsistent, but poor in all the other things. And the other things, and the fact that he did all those other things so well, often compensated for the lack of goals. And so if he went on an 8-9 game goal drought, but he was doing all the other things that he did when he first arrived, linking up the play, teeing up others, causing defenders all sorts of nightmares, pulling people apart, creating spaces for others, then you can forgive the lack of goals. But we got to a point with Gabby Jesus where we were seeing none of it. And I think one of the things that's happened over the last week or so is that it looks to me like the pennies dropped with him in terms of what he needs to be doing if he's going to score goals. And I think Gabriel Jesus at times has been a victim of his own selflessness. He's wanted to go left and help out. He's wanted to go right and help out. He's felt isolated in certain games and felt like he wasn't offering much. And rather than holding that position and trusting that over the course of the game, you'd work it to him and then focusing on taking that moment, he almost felt guilty about jogging around and not receiving the ball, jogging around and not being involved. And so he'd go searching and he'd go looking. But that would mean that when he went and helped on the right or on the left and the build-up then became easier and turned into something, he was never in the box or around the 6-yard box or penalty spot to convert whatever opportunity his presence, left or right, had helped fashion. So I think there's something that seems to have clicked with Gabriel Jesus for me, whereby he recognizes that above everything else, his job as a 9 is to score, and his job as a 9 is to provide a goal threat. And yes, he'll do all those other things, But you just look at some of his positioning over the last couple of games, and it is so much more positive. It is so much more aggressive in terms of wanting to be on the last shoulder. You saw the goals against Crystal Palace in the week, always on the shoulder, ready to go, ready to run in behind. You see some of the goals that we scored yesterday, and look where he's positioned in the center of the goal. You see the first goal that he scored yesterday, and it's like, yeah, he's gone out on the left-hand side, which we know he likes to do, but then the first sign of the ball coming in, he's making a move inwards towards the corner of the 6-yard box where he feels like he can score. Watch the second Jesus goal back again. And the minute that sort of Thomas Partey looks like he's going to bring the ball down out of the air, Jesus is quickly across, and he moves into a position where he feels like he can have an opportunity. And that stuff maybe wasn't happening as quickly and wasn't happening as often as it should be for a number 9 in the last few months. But it feels like maybe the pennies dropped a little bit in terms of the fact that, yes, you have loads to offer. We know you do. We know you do. But if you don't give us what we need in your primary position, then how much use are you to us? Focus on what you're primarily there to do, and that's play as a 9 and be in all the positions that a 9 should be in. Be there waiting when the opportunities that a 9 gets present themselves, and then you got to take them. And confidence helps you take them. Not overthinking, being more instinctive. All of that helps in finishing situations, as we've learned and seen over the years. But I just think, yeah, there's a difference in his movement. There's a difference in his priorities, as far as I can see, and that's really, really helped. Okay, let's take some of your questions then from the live chat box. Keep them coming. What have we got? Let's take this one from Trini Guna, who says, would you go for Paul Pogba on a free in January? Oh, don't, because I'm one of the people that always really rated Paul Pogba, even when everybody else was slating him. I think technically he's a fantastic footballer, but you think about what wage is going to be on. You think about the circus that comes with Paul Pogba, and no, I probably wouldn't make that move right now. Carrie Tanninen says, should they give red cards when players act to get penalties? I think it's got to be really obvious that it was a dive, because sometimes there's contact and we go, oh, but it wasn't enough contact. Well, that's subjective, isn't it? It's difficult to kind of know how much that contact impacted the player because you're not the one that went down. So I think it's got to be really obvious. Like, when we see players like going down with zero contact, that's clearly simulation. There's no debate about it. And in those instances, I think, yeah, further punishment would be fine. There was a question from John Daly, who says, with Saka being out now, do you think that Arteta will start playing Martinelli, Jesus, or Sterling on the right? Well, the bad news is that Raheem Sterling's out injured as well at the minute. Don't know how long he's going to be sidelined for. Don't know if it's a serious issue. We're going to have to wait and see. I think for me right now, if Saka's going to be out, it's got to be Martinelli on that right-hand side. I don't think it's ideal. I talked about some of the benefits of that earlier on in the pod, and I'm hoping that will prove beneficial to him if indeed we do have to deal without Bukayo Saka for a little while. But I think my go-to would probably be Martinelli and then Trossard on the left-hand side, I think is what I would do, at least for now. See how that goes. Jon Torres says, hit the likes. Yes, please do. Where are we at on the likes? Are we still slacking on the likes? Let's have a quick look, because there are plenty of you with us live on this Sunday morning. I'd love to get more likes on the board. Subscribe as well, guys. We're trying to get to 40K by the end of the season. That's the goal. That's the objective. That's the ambition. Also, if you're listening on audio, leave us a review because we've got targets there as well. Junior Gunner says, Isak has 40 Premier League goals in 67 games. And where's the number 14? Is he the most tailored striker option we could go for, H? I mean, he'd be great. He'd be great. But we've said it before, there's clearly a frosty relationship between Arsenal and Newcastle for lots of reasons. Newcastle are one of the new money clubs. Arsenal are one of the old money clubs. And as a consequence of that, there is a bit of a tension. We've heard that Arsenal were one of the clubs that complained the most about the Saudi takeover, that tried to put the brakes on it. Arsenal not the only ones, but there's obviously something there. I think we've developed quite a tasty rivalry on the pitch as well over the last couple of years. And as much as Alexander Isak would probably want to come to Arsenal, particularly if Newcastle have a bit of an underwhelming season, fail to make Europe again. Like a player of that quality, he's not only got to be playing in Europe, guys, he's got to be playing in the Champions League. So, yeah, I feel like he would be a great option. I feel stylistically he'd fit. I think he'd be a massive asset. But the problem is that Newcastle are going to want one hell of a compensation to let him go. And that's where I worry that maybe that's a deal that Arsenal look at and think is probably a little bit beyond their reach. Big hello to Mohammed joining us live. He says, do you agree with me that the Arsenal board will make a big mistake if they don't sign a winger in January after Saka's big injury? Seems he'll be out for 2 months realistically, so not to jeopardize our season. Well, I don't know if he's going to be out for 2 months at the time of recording, so I have to stress that. But I do think if he is out, then the need for a forward, which already existed, by the way, only becomes greater. And I will feel a little bit let down if we don't go out in the window and do something that just strengthens us in that area. I think we need it anyway. I've said for a while that we need another goal threat, whether that be a creator or a finisher. I'm not too fussed. I think we could do with either, really. And I'm not silly enough or naive enough to think that this is a window where we can expect 3-4 players to come in. I think it's a needs-must window. And I think that we're going to have to do something regardless. But with the Saka injury, I think that, there's a much bigger, stronger case. And we're now in the territory where if it doesn't happen, fans are going to be up in arms, and understandably so. Understandably so. Okay, let's leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Remember to leave a like on the video if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you're watching us, you know the drill and all the rest of it. If you're listening to us, I should say, then make sure you leave a review on your preferred platform. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner, and check out NordVPN. There's a fantastic offer available to Chronicles of a Gooner listeners. You can find the link in the description. You get a mega discount plus 4 months for free at the end of your plan. That'll save you a fair bit of money. NordVPN.com/Chronicles AFC. We thank them for their support of the podcast. I would wish you a Merry Christmas, but I'm going to speak to you all before then anyway, so there's no need just yet. Don't want to go too early. See you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Goodbye.